Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're doing well. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Tuesday Blues Day. That's when we play the blues. Just kidding. But I actually do say that almost every Tuesday, and I don't mean anything by it. So that's how insane I am. Hey, yesterday I was sharing about hyperspiritualism and how God delivered me from it, and a little bit of how I got. Really, yesterday I mainly shared how I got into it. Which is realizing that there was more to the Christian experience than what I was led to believe growing up, and that led me in a slippery slope of kind of idolizing just the portions of the Christian experience that I didn't know before, and really undermining and dismissing the portions of the Christian experience that I had already actually been living in. And that worldview, that belief system, started to take away from several things, such as relationships in my life and excellence in my life in different practical life areas of health and academics and work, as well as in my theology. I started believing things that weren't true because I thought that they weren't true. And in my spirituality, I became a little bit less grounded, and a little bit less able to discern, honestly, the difference between holy Rhema revelation and dangerous false teaching. And how did God bring me out of hyperspiritualism? It wasn't actually any of those negative signs that I told you, because as it related to theology, I wasn't aware that anything was off. I gave the example yesterday of thinking that the world is just a complete illusion, and that the only thing that is real is what is ethereal. As an example of bad theology, I didn't know that was wrong. I was like, I'm on to something, and this is amazing, and this is the next thing that I got to share with everybody because this is so important, you know? And it wasn't the relationships that suffered due to this perceived chasm in my perspective of whether or not they were on the hyper-spiritual hype train or not. Because in my mind, I was doing something good by distancing myself in those relationships and going higher up the spiritual mountain, you know. It also wasn't areas of my life suffering, because again, I thought I was doing what I thought was a good thing to do. Like, I'm doing the holy thing, the right thing. I'm not putting all my time and effort into these things that don't matter, these things that don't even exist. I'm putting all my time and all my effort in the things that do matter, like worshiping and praying, whatever. And how did God actually heal me? How did He deliver me from hyperspiritualism before it got dangerous, you know, before it got way out of line or out of balance? It was already out of balance, but it could have been worse, for sure. And ultimately, I think, if I'm being honest, what did it is serving. What I mean by that is being missionally engaged with the purposes of God, activating your life, orienting your life around the things that God's called believers to do. And for me, you already know from past videos that a big piece of that was in leadership, or with leadership, using a leadership gifting. And the first real taste of that for me was leading a life group in college, and then more roles in the years following and stuff, and just discipling individuals as kind of like a mentor figure. Anyways, that I didn't have I didn't have space for hyperspiritualism. Like, it's like the difference between being a civilian and being a soldier. And how much, like, a soldier that's like on duty in an active battle. You know, it's like, how much time for pleasure does a soldier have versus a civilian? And there's a big difference. As it relates to Christianity, you know, my freshman year, I was like a civilian. And as it relates to Christianity, what that means is my faith was all about my faith. I wasn't in a battle. I wasn't enlisted in any particular army. I wasn't commissioned with any particular task. I was just following God, you know, just learning, growing. I was like a kid in a parent's household. It's not the same level of weight, not the same measure of responsibility. It's like, hey, just learn and grow and practice washing the dishes and be respectful, and we're teaching you. But I didn't know that was meant to be temporary. I thought I was just doing the things of following God, and the difference is in following God that a lot of people maybe never take the call. A lot of people maybe never move out from their parents' house. A lot of people maybe never enlist in the army of God, and it makes room for hyperspiritualism. It makes room for all sorts of things, but even sin, just all sorts of things. And if I believed that my life was all about me knowing God personally, as much as I can possibly personally know Him, and that nothing else matters, which is exactly what I believed. And I would still maybe believe that with a caveat now, and the caveat is, the way you're going to know Him is not just by seeking Him personally, it's going to be by walking with Him. It's like enduring the things He endured. Like, our fellowship with God is not just an ethereal one. It's not just a camaraderie. It's not just a common Holy Spirit. It's also the fellowship of His sufferings. You know, it's also the marks of Jesus on our own bodies. It's being persecuted for His name's sake. And I'm not trying to be too dramatic, but that is what saved me, I think, more than anything, from hyperspiritualism. Is it had to get, like, that belief had to change in order for me to say yes to leadership in the church. Because leading in the church meant I have less time for myself, which meant I have less time to read the Bible. I have less time to pray. And some of y'all are like, no, I mean, you shouldn't have to cut that out. You should just cut out other things. I'm like, I already had cut out other things. Like, I was spending many hours a day doing very spiritual things. That's all I did, you know? Beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day. And so, yes, very legitimately, no other way around it, I'm going to have to spend less time praying if I say yes to this leadership role. That really offended me and really made it difficult for me to say yes to leading, because it was outside of my worldview. I didn't think that was from God. Except that God had made it super clear that He did want me to lead. That was the initial tipping point that shifted my mindset away from the more spiritual things, the better, and everything else is fake. As soon as it became, I'm in the army, I'm not just attending services, God's wanting to enlist me. He's not just wanting to teach me. He's wanting to add responsibility on my life, you know, not just entertain me. that put the first big crack in the armor of my hyper-spiritualism. And there are many other things that he did in the years following to expose to me the pitfalls of it and to show me the glory of true spirituality, which is walking with God, you know. And it's not defined by what you do or don't do, like I ended my yesterday's video with. But I think if I hadn't said yes to serving, that it would have been impossible for me to get rescued from the vortex. And so, hey, if you're ever wondering if something is in your heart that doesn't really fit with God, start volunteering 10, 15, 20 hours a week in your local church. Rub shoulders really closely with other really mature believers, and you'll find out what has to get chiseled away and what's actually gold that gets to stay. So, hope y'all are encouraged. I could really share a lot more about this topic, but we're just going to be done with it for now. I'll talk to y'all soon. Life is worship. God is love.